I was mentioning last night at the 4:30 Mass a little quick reflection on a phrase or two in the Gospel today about, the harvest is abundant, but laborers are few, and that has a variety of interpretations to it. In the society that we live today, we hear reports that volunteerism, in our case, ministries or people participating in their churches to whatever degree, is declining. And of course, we ask the question, how can we continue to minister in any number of ways in our communities and in our churches? The other interpretation, sometimes you hear this, is a very clerical one. It talks about there's not enough clergy, not enough priests. And we've heard that for so long, and, maybe we realize it, but maybe we don't. Somebody was talking to me before or after the 8 o'clock Mass and said, a church they used to belong to was in Kingston. Used to have 3 associates in the pastor, and those days are just about gone. Even in a parish like this, at times had an associate as it grew, but no associates anymore. And the clergy are getting more and more like me, gray-haired, and older. This week at a meeting, the person who was facilitating the meeting made a point of saying that last Sunday, 3 parishes in our diocese had no priest. They had no Mass. They may have had a communion service in the absence of a priest, but there was no Mass celebrated. And we might say, well, thank God that wasn't here. Father Joe will never leave us. No, Father Joe is starting to think about when the day will come. You're not retiring, Father. Yes, I am. Someday. Sooner than later. And then we need to plan for that. We need to look forward to the future, the real future. And so in weeks and months to come, the churches in this area will be talking about that. Will St. Mary's close? No. I had somebody say to me a couple years ago, oh, Father, St. Mary's is closing. I said, you're out of your mind. It's not closing, because I'd be the first to know. But the way our church may change a bit. We may be asked to make a few sacrifices here and there to be a better church in this part of Saratoga County. Today's gospel, we hear Jesus appoint a further 72, as they say. And the number is an interesting number, because in the time of Jesus, it was thought that there were 72 nations. And so they're going out into the world. And Jesus, in sending them forth and commissioning them, in a sense, doesn't say to them, by the way, here's the catechism, go and teach it. No. All Jesus asks is that they share his word, the good news that he brought, not just in word, but in action with other people, through the lives that he lived and through the lives that they're called to live. It's reported that St. Francis had said, St. Francis of Assisi, that he said, preach the gospel at all times. If necessary, use words. And so as we think about our role in being followers of Jesus, the people appointed for today, how do our lives speak the words of Jesus with the people that we come in contact with, that we associate with every day? How do our lives speak loudly about our faith, our hope, and our love? When I just said the word faith, a little mini story came to my mind that I heard on the radio the other day from Father Dave Dwyer of the Busted Halo Show. They were talking, and somebody said, what does Christianity, Catholicism, What does Catholicism and golf have in common? I'd love to get your answer to it, but we'll be here for a while. The answer is they're both boring. Unless you're into it. Unless you're into it. There's truth there. It does pose the question, how much are we into our faith? How much do we really live it? Hopefully our lives continue to speak louder and louder about our love of God and other people, about our forgiveness of others, for our mercy toward others. Things like this, corporal spiritual works of mercy. How are our lives speaking through those things? How do our lives speak about life and eternal life in our actions and interactions? How do our lives speak of comfort and care and healing for others? How do our lives speak of our sharing, even with the little we have to offer? How do our lives speak loudly about welcoming, about hospitality? And on the list goes, on the list goes. Every weekend when we come here, we're called to leave after our 50, 60 minutes together. Because we come to sort of get the perspective, to be reminded of what we're called to do as people of God. We hear the word, we hear the scriptures. What's Jesus saying to us? Then we're nourished by the sacrament, fed for the journey of life and faith, to go out into the world and bring this word, the gospel of Jesus to others. Imagine, we say this often, but imagine what can really happen if we continue to live as Jesus asks us to do, through our lives and certainly through our words, but especially through our actions and interactions with and for one another.